When the old ones spoke of death, they did not speak of it the way the world speaks of it today. They did not call it an ending. They called it a turning, a door, a long walk home along a road we have all been walking since the day we were born. Tonight, sit with me by the fire. Let me share what the elders believed happens when a person dies, not as a rule for you to follow, just as a story, the kind a grandfather tells when the night grows quiet and the young ones have finally stopped asking questions. Stay with me a while, and I will tell it the way it was told to me, slowly, the way the old people told everything that mattered. The first thing the old ones taught is that a human being is more than a body. The body is borrowed. It is made of the earth, and one day it returns to the earth, the way a leaf returns to the ground that fed it. We forget this when we are young and strong. We believe the body is who we are. But the elders said the body is only the clothing the spirit wears while it walks here. And like all clothing, it grows thin and worn, and one day it is set aside. But the part of us that loved, that remembered, that laughed around fires like this one, that part was never made of earth at all. The old people had a word for it that does not translate easily. The closest I can give you is breath. The living breath that was placed in us at the beginning, that moves through us all our days, and that does not die when the body grows still. That breath came from somewhere, they said. And when we die, it simply goes back to where it came from. So when the breath leaves the body, the elders said, the spirit does not fall into darkness. It wakes, the way you wake from a long and heavy sleep. At first it is confused. It does not understand. It reaches for hands that are no longer there. It calls names that no longer answer. It stands in the room where it died and wonders why the living are weeping. This is why, in many nations, the people would speak gently to the one who had passed. They would lean close and say, "You may go now. We are all right. We will be all right. Walk on." They were not talking to an empty body. They believed the one who left was still near, still listening, and that the kindest thing they could do was to give that spirit permission to leave without worry. For they believed the spirit lingers a little while, near the ones it loved, not to be feared. It stays close for a few days, they said, to look one last time on the faces it knew, to walk once more through the places it lived, to finish the goodbye that death came too quickly to allow. And then, when it is ready, it turns toward the road. The old people had customs for these few days, and every nation kept them a little differently. Some would cover the mirrors, so the spirit would not be startled or held by its own reflection. Some would open a window or a door so the spirit would know the way out and feel no trap in the house. Some would sit with the body through the night and never leave it alone, not for a moment, the way you would not leave a traveler alone on the eve of a long journey. And here is something the world has forgotten, but the old ones never did. They did not hurry their grief. Today we are told to be strong, to move on quickly, to put it behind us. But the elders knew that grief is a kind of love that has nowhere left to go. They gave it room. They gave it time. They would weep and wail and cut their hair short as a sign that something had been cut away from their lives. And then, slowly, in its own season, the grief would soften, the way the hard ground softens in the spring. But they also believed something gentle about that grief. They believed that grief too heavy could hold the spirit back. If the living clung too hard, wept too long, refused to let go, the one who had passed might linger out of love, unable to walk on, caught between two worlds. And so the elders taught their people to grieve fully, and then to release, to love the one who left enough to let them go. Cry, they said, cry until the crying is done, and then dry your face and tell them, walk on, we will carry you with us, you do not need to stay. Then begins the journey. The old ones spoke of a road the spirit must walk, long and quiet and lit by the same stars that have guided travelers since the beginning. Some nations called it the path of souls. Some saw it written across the night sky itself, that great river of light we now call the Milky Way. The road was not always easy. Some told of a great water the spirit must cross, and a narrow log laid across it, and that only those who had lived in a good way could cross without fear. Others spoke of a guardian who waited along the path, who would look into the traveler and see everything they had done, the kindness and the cruelty both, and let them pass or turn them back. The shapes of the story changed from nation to nation, but the heart of it was always the same. How you walked that road was decided by how you had lived. And here is the part that mattered most to the old people. No one walks that road alone. The grandmothers who went ahead are waiting, the old friends, the animals you loved in this life, even those you grieved the most, the ones whose leaving broke something in you that never quite healed. The elders believed they would be standing at the end of that road, young again, well again, whole again, with their hands open and their faces full of the joy of seeing you come home. This is why the old people did not teach their children to fear death. Think of that. In a world far harder than ours, where winter could take the weak and sickness could take the strong, where death sat closer to every fire than it does to ours, the elders did not raise their children to be afraid. Fear, they said, is for the things we do not understand. But death was not a stranger to them. It was a relative, a quiet one, who comes for everyone in their time, and who is not cruel. They had seen too many people leave this world in peace to believe it was something to dread. They had sat beside the dying and watched a strange calm come over them at the end. They had heard the old ones, in their final hours, speak of seeing faces in the room that no one else could see, the faces of mothers and fathers long gone, come to walk them home. The elders did not think these were the wanderings of a failing mind. They believed they were exactly what they appeared to be. The welcome had begun. So the old people taught their children how to die well by teaching them how to live well, because to them these were the same lesson. The way you walk that road, they said, is decided long before you reach it. It is decided here, now, in how you treated the ones who could do nothing for you, in whether you spoke the truth when a lie would have been easier, in whether you took more than you needed or left something behind for those who came after you, people you would never meet, who would warm themselves at fires you would never see. A life lived in balance, they believed, makes for an easy crossing. A life lived in greed and cruelty, in the taking and the taking and the never giving back, makes the road heavy and long and lonely. Not because someone is waiting to punish you, but because you carry across that road exactly what you made of yourself here. Nothing more and nothing less. So when the elders spoke of the next world, they were never really only speaking of the next world. They were speaking of this one, of how to live. Be honest, they said, because the road remembers. Be generous, because you carry nothing across with you but the good you have done. Care for the old and the sick and the children, because one day you will be old, and one day you may be sick, and you were once a child that someone carried. And forgive while there is still time, because no one wants to walk that long road still holding a stone in their chest, a grudge grown heavy, an apology never spoken. The old people had a saying, in many forms, in many languages: walk in such a way that you would not be ashamed to meet your grandmother at the end of the road. Live so that the ancestors are glad to see you coming. That was the whole of it. Not a list of rules. Just a way of walking through your days as though the people who loved you most were watching and waiting and hoping you would come home with clean hands and a quiet heart. There is more, the old ones believed, and it is perhaps the gentlest part of all. They believed that the ones who have crossed over are not gone. They are not far. They are only on the other side of a thin curtain, closer than your own breath. The road they walk runs alongside the road we walk, and in some places the two roads come so near that we can almost feel the ones we lost walking beside us. They believed the dead still watch over the living, not as ghosts to frighten us, but as family who never stopped being family. You would feel them, the old ones said, in the wind that moves the grass when there is no storm, in the bird that lands close and looks at you a moment too long, in the animal that meets your eyes and will not look away, carrying a message you feel in your chest before you can put it into words, and most of all, in dreams. When someone you have lost comes to you in a dream and sits beside you, calm and well, and tells you without a single word that they are at peace, the elders did not call that an empty dream. They believed it was a visit. A door opened for a moment so that love could pass through. The old people did not need proof of these things. They had something older than proof. They had memory, passed down by voices like mine, around fires like this one, for longer than anyone can count. Grandmother to mother to child, the same teachings, the same stories, worn smooth by 1,000 tellings like a stone in a river, and they believed that as long as we keep telling the story, no one is ever truly lost. The dead live on in the living. They live in the names we give our children. They live in the way we set a fire, or sing a song, or speak to a grandchild the way our own grandmother once spoke to us. The flame lives on when it lights another. That is how the old ones understood it. That is how it was meant to be. There is one more thing, and then I will let you rest. The elders believed that we owe something to the dead, and that the debt is not heavy. We owe them remembrance. Speak of them, the old people said. Tell your children who they were. Tell the funny stories and the hard ones. Set a place for them in your memory and visit it often, for a person dies twice. Once when the breath leaves the body, and once when the last person who remembers them speaks their name for the last time. But the second, we can hold off for a long, long time simply by remembering, and so we keep them with us. And so they are not gone. There were customs, too, for letting go of the things a person left behind. In many nations, after someone died, the family would give their belongings away. The good blanket, the fine knife, the beadwork made over long winters. They would give it to neighbors, to the poor, to anyone who had need. This was not because the things had no worth. It was because they had too much worth. The old ones understood that a spirit can be tied to what it owned, and that the living can be tied even harder. To hold a dead man's coat and weep into it every night is to keep both of you from walking on. So they gave it all away, and in the giving, the grief found somewhere to go, and the spirit was set free of its possessions, light enough to travel. And the old people did not believe the bond was broken when the body was buried. At certain times, in many nations, they would set aside a plate of food for the ones who had passed. A little of the first meal of a feast placed in the fire, or left at the edge of the camp, or carried to the place where the dead were laid. They were not feeding ghosts. They were keeping a promise. They were saying, "You are still part of this family. You still have a place at our fire, and we have not forgotten that you are hungry for the love of the living, the way the living are hungry for you." The dead are fed by remembrance. That was the teaching. Speak their names over the food, and they are nourished wherever they walk. The old ones also watched for signs, for they believed the two worlds spoke to each other in a language older than words. When an owl called close to the lodge in the deep of night, some nations took it as a messenger, come to say that someone was preparing to walk the road soon. They did not fear the owl. You do not hate the one who brings the letter. They would grow quiet and gather the family and make ready and say their words while there was still time to say them. For the old people believed the worst thing was not death. The worst thing was a death with words left unspoken, a goodbye that never happened, a forgiveness that came one day too late. And they told of good deaths, the kind they hoped for. They told of elders who simply knew, the way you know the year has turned even before the first cold morning. An old man who one day asked to be carried outside, to sit in the sun and look at the hills one last time. An old woman who called her grandchildren to her and told each one what she saw in them, the good things she had watched grow in them across the years, and then closed her eyes as though she were only resting. The old people did not call this sad. They called it a blessing. To leave with your words given, your family gathered, your heart quiet. To step from this life the way you step from a warm lodge into a clear night, knowing exactly where you are going and that you are expected. They had the tenderest belief of all for the children who left too soon. The old ones could not bear to think of a small spirit walking that long road alone, and so they did not believe it. They believed the little ones were met at once, gathered up, carried the rest of the way in arms that had been waiting. Some said the children who die young were old spirits who only needed to touch this world for a moment, to be held, to be loved, and then to go on. It did not take the grief away from the mothers and fathers. Nothing could. But it gave the grief a place to rest. The child was not lost in the dark. The child was home before the parents had finished weeping, and would be the first to come running when their turn came at last. Let me tell you a small thing the old people used to say, to make the teaching plain. They said that being born and dying are the same door, walked through from opposite sides. When a child is born into this world, they said, on the other side a circle of loved ones is weeping, for one of their own has left them to begin the long journey here. And when an old one dies and leaves this world, here we weep. But on the other side, a circle of loved ones is gathering at the road's end, glad, calling out, lighting the fire, because their traveler is finally coming home. So every death you grieve, they said, is a homecoming somewhere you cannot yet see. The weeping on this side is the welcome on that one. The old ones learned all of this from the land itself, for the land was their first teacher and their oldest book. They watched the year turn. They saw the leaves blaze and fall, and the cold close over everything, and the ground go hard and still and seemingly dead. And then they saw the spring come, as it always came, the green pushing up through the very ground that had looked so lifeless, the river breaking its ice, the geese returning along the same roads in the sky. Nothing truly ends, the land told them. It only changes its form and waits its season. Winter is not the death of the year. It is part of the year. And a human life, they believed, is the same. We are a season. We blaze, and we fall, and we return to the ground that fed us, and something of us rises again in a spring we will not have to see to trust. So if you carry grief tonight, and many of you do, hear what the old ones would tell you. The one you lost is not in the cold ground. That is only the borrowed clothing set aside. They have walked ahead, the way a traveler goes ahead to make the fire warm before the others arrive. They are well. They are young again and whole and waiting. And one day, far down the road, when it is your turn to make that quiet walk under the river of stars, they will be among the first faces you see, with their hands open, glad that you have finally come home. That is what the elders believed happens when you die. Not an ending. A turning. A door. A long walk home along a road we have all been walking since the day we were born. Thank you for sitting with me a while. I know these are not small things to speak of, and I am grateful you stayed by the fire to hear them. If this brought you a little peace tonight, stay a while longer, for there are more stories waiting by this fire, and I would be glad of the company. And remember the words the old ones never let us forget. Walk gently. Speak truly. Care for the ones who cannot care for themselves, and love, while there is still light, the people who walk this road beside you, for the road is shorter than we think, and the fire is warm, and we are only here together for a little while.